The afternoon sun was warm, but the air in the old field had a chill to it. A girl, let's call her Anya, was walking along a path she thought she knew well. She liked the quiet out here, away from the noise of her small town. This area was mostly forgotten, with tall, golden grass and the broken remains of a fence. People said it used to be a place where soldiers trained a long time ago. They also said to stay away because of old, rusty things hidden in the weeds. Anya was careful, watching her step. That's when she heard it. Not a bird, not the wind. It was a sound that didn't belong. A soft, shaky whine, then a sharp, painful yelp that was quickly choked off. It stopped her heart for a second. She stood perfectly still, listening. The sound came again, from a tangle of bushes and coiled, rusty wire to her left dot. Her feet moved before her brain could tell her to be afraid. She pushed through the dry grass, the thorns catching on her jeans. And then she saw him, a dog. A huge German shepherd. He was a mess of matted brown and black fur, covered in dirt and burrs. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the barbed wire. An old vicious coil of it, the kind with long sharp points, was wrapped around his back leg and his chest. He must have tried to run through it or gotten tangled while running from something. Every time he took a panicked breath, the rusty barbs dug deeper. A dark stain of blood spread through the fur on the wire. The dog saw her and his head snapped up. His eyes were wide with terror and pain. A low, warning rumble came from his throat, but it was weak. He was too tired, too hurt to be truly dangerous. He was just scared. Anya knew she should probably run and get help. But looking at those eyes, she knew he might not last that long. He was exhausted. The wire was too tight. "Okay," she whispered, more to herself than to the dog. "Okay, just be still. I'm here to help." She dropped her backpack slowly and knelt down, keeping a few feet between them. She didn't look directly into his eyes, which could seem like a challenge. Instead, she looked at his shoulder, talking in the calmest, softest voice she could manage. "You're in a real mess, buddy," she murmured. "A real mess. But we can fix it. Just gotta be patient." She rummaged in her bag. All she had was a small, basic pocket knife her grandfather had given her. The blade was small, but it was sharp. The problem was the dog. And the wire. She couldn't cut it without getting closer, and if he jerked or bit her, they'd both be in trouble. An idea came to her. She slowly took off her thick hooded sweatshirt. She was left in just a t-shirt, and the cold air bit her skin. "This might seem silly," she said, her voice a steady hum. She carefully wrapped the sweatshirt around her left hand and forearm, making a big, padded bundle. It would be a shield. She inched forward on her knees. The dog's growl got louder, and he tried to pull away, which made him yelp in pain. Kanya froze. I know. It hurts. I'm trying to stop the hurt. It took forever to close the gap. Finally, she was within arm's reach. With her padded left hand, she moved slowly, and placed it gently on the dog's side, away from the wire. She just rested it there. A point of calm contact. The dog flinched, but he didn't snap. He was shaking. "Good boy," she breathed. "That's it. Just let me be here." With her right hand, she opened the pocket knife. The real test was now. She had to touch the wire. She had to pull on it to get the blade under it. It was a dangerous, delicate puzzle. She hooked her padded left hand under the dog's neck, not squeezing, just offering a steady support. Then, with the knife in her right, she found a loose end of the wire. The moment she touched it, the dog panicked. He thrashed. Anya held on, her padded arm taking the brunt of his movement, keeping her knife hand away from his skin and hers. "Stop. Please stop," she pleaded, her calm breaking for a second dot, as if he understood the desperation in her voice. He collapsed again, panting heavily. Tears stung Anya's eyes, from fear and effort. She saw a spot where one loop of wire was tight around his leg. If she could just cut that one, it might loosen the rest. She worked the tip of the blade under the wire. It was hard. The rust made it thick. She sawed back and forth, her arms aching. The dog whimpered with every movement. Snap. One strand broke. It was like a magic trick. The tension in the whole nasty coil eased just a little. It was enough. The dog seemed to feel it too. He stopped fighting and lay his head down in the dirt, watching her with exhausted, confused eyes. That gave her hope. She found another loop around his chest. Her fingers were numb with cold and stiff with tension. She sawed again. Snap. Another break. Piece by piece, cut by cut, she freed him. It took over 40 minutes. Finally, the last piece of wire fell away into the grass. The dog was free. For a moment, neither of them moved. The dog just lay there, breathing deeply. Anya sat back on her heels, her hands scratched and bleeding in places, her t-shirt filthy and her good sweatshirt ruined. She was shivering. The big shepherd slowly, painfully, pushed himself up. He stood on wobbly legs. Anya held her breath. What would he do? Run away? Now that he was free, maybe he would just bolt. The dog took one shaky step, then another. He didn't run away. He walked right up to Anya, leaned his heavy, bloody head against her chest, and let out a long, shuddering sigh. That's when Anya wrapped her arms carefully around his neck, avoiding his wounds, and started to cry. She didn't know who he was or where he came from. All she knew was that he was hers now. She had to get him home. The walk home was the longest of Anya's life. The big dog, who she'd already started calling Bear in her head, could only manage a slow, limping walk. Every few steps, he'd stop and lean against her leg, as if gathering strength. She talked to him the whole way, a steady stream of nonsense to keep them both calm. Almost there, Bear. Just a little farther. See the big red barn? That's home. You'll be safe there. He seemed to listen, his ears twitching at the sound of her voice. When she finally pushed open the back gate to her family's farm, her mother was at the kitchen window. She saw her daughter, dirty and shivering, supporting the weight of a massive wounded animal. For a second, her mother just stared, her hands covered in flour from making bread. Then she rushed outside. Anya, what on earth? Is that blood? It's not mine, Mom, Anya said quickly, her voice tired but firm. It's his. He was caught in barbed wire, out by the old grounds. I had to help him. Her mother's face softened from shock to concern. She was a practical woman who loved animals. She took a careful look at the dog. He lowered his head, but didn't growl. Okay, she said, making a decision. We can't bring him inside with all this dirt and whatever else. The barn. Let's get him settled in the barn. Together, they guided Bear into the old, warm barn. The smell of hay and clean wood was peaceful. In an empty stall that had once held a gentle old horse, they laid down fresh, soft hay and piled some old blankets on top. Bear sank into it with a groan of relief. Anya's father came in from the fields then, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. He took one look at the situation, his daughter's torn clothes, the huge, strange dog, and crossed his arms. That's not a stray, he said simply. Look at the build of him. That's somebody's working dog. He's nobody's right now, Anya pleaded. Look at him, Dad. He was abandoned. While her parents had a quiet, tense discussion by the door, Anya fetched a bowl of warm water and a clean cloth. She knelt by Bear again. This might sting, she whispered. With the softest touch, She began to clean the wounds on his leg and chest. The cuts were deep and angry-looking, but none seemed to need stitches. The dog flinched, but allowed it. He kept licking her other hand, not as a thank you, but perhaps just to taste the salt on her skin, to know her better. That night, after, they'd all agreed he could stay in the barn until they found his owner. Anya brought him a simple meal of plain-cooked chicken and rice. He ate it slowly, with a polite calmness that surprised her. He wasn't starving or frantic. He ate like it was a job to be finished. The first week was strange. Bear slept almost 20 hours a day, healing. The local vet came, gave him some shots and antibiotics, and noted the clipped notch in his ear. "That's interesting," the vet said. "Sometimes they do that for identification. Military or police, maybe. But there was no microchip. He was a ghost. When he was awake, Bear was quiet. Eerily quiet. He never barked. Not at the mailman, not at the cows, not at the cats scurrying in the barn. He would watch everything with those intense, dark eyes, his head moving slowly to track movement, but he made no sound. Loud noises, however, were a problem. If a pot fell in the kitchen, he'd jump. When Anya's dad started up the old tractor, Bear would press himself against the back wall of his stall, trembling. It was a deep, fearful shaking, but with Anya, he was different. After a few days, when she would enter the barn, his tail would give 2 or 3 slow, heavy thumps against the hay. Not a wild wag, but a clear signal. "Asterisk, I see you. I'm glad it's you." Asterisk, he started following her, not in a playful, puppy way. It was a purposeful, silent shadowing. If she went to the garden to pull weeds, he would lie at the edge, watching the tree line. If she sat on the porch to read, he would settle at her feet, facing the driveway. He always put himself between her and the open world. Her father noticed it too. One evening, he said to Anya's mom, "You see how he's placed? He's not just lying down. He's posted. He's got a field of view. That's training." One afternoon, Anya was fixing a loose board on the pasture fence. She had her back to the country road. A large, noisy delivery truck rumbled past, backfiring with a loud asterisk bang. Asterisk, Anya jumped. But before she could even turn around, a large, warm body had slid between her and the road. Bear was there, standing sideways, a living wall. He wasn't looking at her. His whole focus was on the retreating truck, his body tense, a low vibration in his chest. It wasn't quite a growl, more like the hum of a live wire. He didn't chase it. He didn't bark. He just made sure the threat was gone, and that she was behind him. He stayed like that until the sound of the truck had completely faded. Then he turned, nudged her hand with his nose, as if to check on her, and went back to lying in the sun, as if nothing had happened. Anya sat down right there in the grass, her heart pounding. This was more than gratitude. This was something else. This dog wasn't just recovering. He was, for reasons she couldn't understand, choosing to do a job. And the job, it seemed, was her. Winter came hard and fast that year. It wrapped the farm in a deep, quiet cold. The kind where the snow crunched under your boots like glass, and your breath hung in the air in a thick cloud. Inside the farmhouse, it felt like a safe little capsule of warmth, especially with Bear, now sleeping on an old rug by the wood stove. He had earned his place inside, his silent vigilance a comfort to the whole family. It was on one of the coldest nights, the kind the weatherman said could freeze pipes solid, that everything changed. Anya's father was on an overnight trip to a farm auction 2 towns over. It was just Anya and her mother in the house. They'd locked up tight, checked the barn animals, and settled in for a quiet evening. Around midnight, the deep quiet was broken, not by a sound inside, but by a feeling. Anya was reading in bed when she saw Bear's head snap up from where he slept on her floor. His ears, which usually lay back, were pitched forward, rigid. His entire body went still, not with fear, but with a frightening intensity. He was no longer a pet. He was a statue of pure focus. He didn't growl. He just stood up, fluid and silent, and walked to her bedroom door. He placed his nose against the crack at the bottom and inhaled slowly. Then he turned and looked at her. In the dim light from her window, his eyes held a message she understood instantly. Stay. Be quiet. Downstairs. Her mother was asleep in front of the fading glow of the television. Anya's blood turned to ice. She heard it then. A faint scraping sound from the back of the house, near the kitchen door. Then a muffled curse. A voice, low and rough, said, "Just kick it near the lock." It's old. This was it. The thing people in quiet places whisper about, but never believe will happen to them. Someone was trying to break in. Bear melted from her room and down the dark stairs without a single footfall. Anya followed, her heart hammering against her ribs, moving by instinct. She peeked into the living room. Her mother was just starting to stir, confused by the noise. Crack. The sound of wood splintering was horrifyingly loud. The kitchen door shuddered in its frame. What happened next was a blur of shadows and shapes. So fast Anya's mind could barely piece it together later as the door burst open. Letting in a swirl of freezing air and two dark figures, Bear moved. He did not charge with a roar. He flowed. It was silent, efficient, and terrifying. The first man, a bulky shape, had just stepped inside, a crowbar in his hand. He never saw the dog coming from the side. Bear didn't go for his throat. He launched upwards, his powerful chest hitting the man's shoulder, and his jaws closed over the wrist holding the crowbar. It wasn't a wild, shaking bite. It was a precise, crushing grip. The man screamed, a high, shocked sound, and the crowbar clattered to the floor. In the same motion, Bear used his weight to drive the man down, landing on top of him, pinning him to the kitchen tiles. The dog's head was right by the man's face, a deep, rumbling warning now finally audible in his chest. The man froze, terrified, into stillness. The second man, skinnier and younger, stood frozen in the doorway for one stupid second. He saw his friend pinned under a huge demon-quiet dog. He saw the crowbar on the floor. He saw Anya and her mother now standing in the living room doorway. He turned and ran, disappearing back into the black night. His footsteps scrambling away in the snow dot. It was over in less than 10 seconds. The noise was gone, replaced by the panicked sobs of the man on the floor and the heavy, hot pants of the dog holding him down. The kitchen light flicked on. Anya's mother stood by the switch, her face white as paper, the cordless phone already in her hand, dialing 911. He bit me. The man blubbered, staring up at the animal whose breath was hot on his cheek. He disarmed you, Anya's mother said, her voice surprisingly steady. And he's holding you for the police. You be still. And Bear was. He didn't maul the man. He didn't tear at him. He just held him there, a living, breathing restraint. Every time the man twitched, the rumble in Bear's chest deepened, and he would adjust his grip slightly on the man's jacket sleeve, not his flesh. It was controlled. It was professional. When the police arrived, their flashing blue lights painting the farmhouse in wild colors, they found the scene exactly like that. The intruder, weeping on the floor. The family, shaken but unhurt. And the dog, calmly maintaining the arrest until an officer gently took hold of the man's other arm and said, "Okay, buddy, I've got him. You can release." Bear immediately let go, backed up 2 steps, and sat. He looked at Anya. She nodded, and he came to her side, leaning hard against her leg. She could feel the adrenaline vibrating through his whole body. The police were amazed. They'd seen guard dogs before. They'd seen pets protect homes. They'd never seen anything like this. He didn't even break the skin on the arm, one officer remarked, examining the man's jacket sleeve, which was soaked with saliva and deeply punctured. But the skin underneath was only bruised. He just neutralized the threat. The other officer shook his head, looking at Bear with a mix of respect and disbelief. It was like watching a trained soldier work. Took the weapon first, secured the suspect, didn't escalate. That's not instinct. That's procedure. As they took the man away and took statements, the story started to solidify. These men had been hitting isolated farms, looking for cash and tools. They picked the wrong one. Long after the police had left, the door boarded up, and the farm sunk back into an uneasy quiet. Anya sat on the floor with Bear. She hugged him tightly, burying her face in his fur. He licked the tears from her cheek. Her mother brought over 2 mugs of sweet tea, her hands still trembling slightly. She sat beside them. "You saved us," she said to the dog, her voice thick. It wasn't a question. Bear just sighed, resting his heavy head in Anya's lap, his job done. But for Anya, the questions were just beginning. The police officer's words echoed in her mind. Asterisk, that's not instinct. That's procedure. Asterisk, who, exactly, had she brought home? The story, of course, didn't stay on the farm. It was too good. The local newspaper ran a piece titled, "Hero Hound Holds Burglar." The brief TV news clip from the county station showed the boarded-up door and the policeman shaking his head, saying, "I've never seen a canine intervention that precise." They showed a blurry, distant shot of Bear lying in the yard, just a big, dark shape. For Anya and her family, life tried to return to normal. The door was repaired. The strange fear of that night slowly faded. But Bear's legend grew in their small town. People at the general store would ask about him. The mailwoman started carrying dog treats. But one person saw the news clip and didn't just see a story. He saw a dog. A few days later, a pickup truck, clean but old, crunched up the gravel driveway. A man got out. He wasn't tall, but he stood very straight. He had a close-cut beard that was more gray than brown, and he moved with a kind of careful purpose. He wore a simple jacket, but his eyes scanned the property like he was reading a map. Anya's father met him on the porch. "Can I help you?" The man's voice was gravelly, but not unkind. "I hope so. My name's John Miller. I'm retired now, but I used to work with dogs. Military K9 South. I think you might have one of mine." Anya, who was listening from just inside the door, felt the bottom drop out of her stomach. She stepped out onto the porch, Bear appearing silently beside her, his body a solid line against her leg. The man, John, saw Bear, and his whole demeanor changed. The careful formality softened. His eyes got a little brighter. He didn't rush forward. He just stood still and said a single word, not loud, but firm. "Kaiser." Bear's head tilted. Just a fraction. His ears twitched. It was the first time he had ever reacted to a name. The name she had given him was just something he had chosen to accept. This one, he seemed to remember. John let out a long, slow breath. "It is you." He looked at Anya's father, then at Anya, his gaze respectful. "May I? I won't approach him if he's unsure." Anya nodded, her throat tight. He decides." John slowly knelt down in the gravel, not on one knee, but in a balanced crouch. He held out a closed fist, not an open hand, at a distance. Bear took 2 steps forward, away from Anya, his nose working the air. He sniffed the man's fist, then moved to his jacket sleeve, his shoes. The tail that usually hung low gave a single, slow wag. Then another John made a soft clicking sound with his tongue. Bear's head lifted. Without a word, John pointed a finger at the ground beside him. Bear looked at Anya, then walked over and sat precisely where the man had pointed Dot. It was the most direct obedience anyone had ever seen from him. "His name is Kaiser," John said, his voice thick with an emotion he was holding back. "Serial number K9 to 728. One of the best multi-purpose canines I ever had the honor to handle. Patrol, detection, tracking. A smart, brave dog." He explained it all then, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee he didn't really drink. Kaiser had been injured during a difficult training exercise, a loud simulation that went wrong. He'd been spooked by a sudden crashing sound and reacted unpredictably. The Army, with strict standards, had marked him as unsuitable for active duty. He wasn't aggressive, just psychologically wounded by the experience. He wasn't supposed to be discarded, John said firmly, a flash of old anger in his eyes. He was supposed to be retired to a good home through our program. I was on leave when it happened. The paperwork for his transfer got lost in some office. He was sent to a temporary holding kennel to wait. He must have been scared, confused by all the new sounds. He found a weak spot in the fence and ran. He looked out the window where Bear Kaiser was now lying in the sun, watching the door. The barbed wire. That was just cruel luck from his run. He was probably out there for days before you found him. Anya thought of the terrified, trapped animal in the wire. She thought of his fear of loud noises. It all made a terrible, sad sense. "So he was a soldier," her father said quietly. "He is a soldier," John corrected gently. "Once they're imprinted, it's who they are." He was waiting. For a mission or for a handler. He looked directly at Anya. "When you cut him free, you didn't just save a dog. You took over as his handler. You gave him a purpose again. You. Everything he's done watching you, guarding the house, taking down that intruder with such control, that's him doing his job. The only job he knows." For you, the room was silent. Anya felt tears pricking her eyes. It wasn't just love she felt for the dog. It was a crushing weight of responsibility and a stunning respect. "What happens now?" her mother asked, the question hanging over them all. John sighed. "Officially, he's still government property. But the fact that he's here, healthy, and has clearly bonded. I can make some calls. I can push for a formal discharge. A retirement. But they'll want to know he's in competent hands." He looked at Anya again. "They'd likely require that his primary handler, you complete a basic civilian K9 management course. So you understand his psychology, his commands, his needs. So you can be a true partner to him." Anya didn't even have to think. "Yes, I'll do anything." A small, real smile broke through John's serious face. "I figured you'd say that. I can help with that, too." Before he left, John went out into the yard with Anya. He showed her a few things. A specific whistle Kaiser responded to. A hand signal for heel. He explained that Kaiser wasn't being quiet because he couldn't bark, but because he was trained to be silent on patrol. His bark was for alerting us to found explosives or drugs, John said. Not for everyday noise. As John's truck disappeared down the lane, Anya knelt in the grass with her dog, her soldier. She put her arms around his neck. "Kaiser," she whispered. He licked her cheek. He answered to both names now. He was Bear, the rescued friend. And he was Kaiser, the professional who had found his duty in a girl's kindness. The two halves were finally one, and Anya finally knew the magnificent, wounded, loyal creature who had chosen to share her life. The mystery was solved, but a new chapter, one of deliberate partnership, was just beginning. The paperwork, as John had warned, was a mountain of its own. There were forms from the military, affidavits from the local police about the break-in, and even a visit from a stern-looking but kind-hearted officer from the Veterans Affairs Office. He watched Anya and Kaiser together for an afternoon, seeing how the dog looked to her for guidance, how he responded to her quiet voice. He saw the trust. Finally, the official envelope arrived. It was stamped with an official seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper that felt heavier than it was. It declared that Canine to 728, known as Kaiser, was honorably discharged and formally retired. His ownership was transferred to Anya. The only condition was appended in neat handwriting: handler to complete certified canine partnership training. John Mueller became a regular visitor on weekends. The training wasn't about teaching Kaiser new tricks. It was about teaching Anya his language. They worked in the big, open field behind the barn. These dogs don't work for praise the way a pet might, John explained. They work for partnership. Your approval is his reward. Watch his eyes. He showed her how to stand, how to move with purpose. He taught her the clear, calm commands Kaiser already knew. Search, heel, watch, hold. Anya learned that Kaiser's intense focus was a tool, and she had to learn how to direct it. It was hard work. It was frustrating sometimes. But seeing Kaiser's ears perk up, his whole body tense with happy readiness when she got it right, was better than any grade she'd ever gotten in school. Spring melted into summer. The story in town had settled from a shocking event into a warm legend. People knew the dog was special, and they respected him. The town's annual summer fair was coming up. The organizers, knowing a good draw when they saw one, asked Anya and her family if they would be willing to do a small, safe demonstration with Kaiser. Just to show what a good working dog can do, they said. For the kids. Anya was nervous. John, however, nodded. It's a good test. A controlled environment with distractions. He's ready. So are you. The day of the fair was bright and hot. There was a smell of popcorn and cut grass in the air. A small crowd gathered in a roped-off area of the field next to the dump tank. There were families with children sitting on the grass, older folks in folding chairs. Anya saw some of her classmates, their eyes wide with curiosity. She stood in the center, with Kaiser at a perfect heel by her side. He wasn't looking at the crowd. He was looking up at her, waiting. She wore a simple black t-shirt and jeans, and she took a deep breath, silencing the flutter in her chest dot, with John standing off to the side, giving a gentle commentary through a small microphone. Anya began. She walked Kaiser through a simple obstacle course, not with treats, but with her quiet commands and hand signals. Over. He cleared a low jump. Through. He weaved through a line of poles. His movements were crisp, powerful, and silent. The crowd watched. Quiet dot, then John brought out a small, airtight container. He explained that Kaiser was trained to find specific scents. He let the dog sniff it, then gave the command, search. John had hidden several similar containers around the demonstration area. One under a cone, one in a box, one buried lightly in a pile of grass clippings. Kaiser went to work. The playful, lumbering bear was gone. This was all Kaiser. He moved methodically, his nose skimming the ground, his tail straight out. He ignored a ball that rolled nearby. He ignored a child who shouted. He was a creature of pure, focused purpose. Asterisk, sniff, sniff, pause. Move on. Sniff, circle, sit dot asterisk. He sat directly in front of the pile of grass clippings and looked at Anya. She walked over, pulled out the container, and gave his favorite command. One John had taught her meant the job was done perfectly. Good boy. She didn't shout it. She said it with a warmth that flooded her whole voice. Kaiser's stern posture broke. His tail wagged in a happy, sweeping arc, and he leaned against her leg. The crowd broke into spontaneous, warm applause. Not wild cheers, but a sound of deep appreciation. After the demonstration, people came up slowly and respectfully. They asked gentle questions. A little boy, no more than 5, approached, clutching his mother's hand. He looked terrified but fascinated. Can I pet him?" he whispered. Anya knelt down, putting a hand on Kaiser's chest. "You have to ask him properly," she said softly. She showed the boy how to offer a closed fist. Kaiser, still in his working mindset, sniffed it solemnly. Then, with a glance at Anya for permission, he lowered his great head and nudged the boy's hand. The boy's face exploded into a grin. He carefully stroked Kaiser's head. "He's a good dog," the boy declared. Later, as the fair wound down and the evening sun stretched their shadows long across the field, Anya and Kaiser walked home. They didn't take the road. They cut through the very field where she had found him almost a year before. The barbed wire was long gone, cleared away by her father. She stopped in the quiet, golden light. Kaiser sat beside her, watching a hawk circle far overhead. She thought about the journey. From the terrified, trapped creature, to the silent shadow, to the shocking protector, to the known soldier, and now to this, a partner. She knelt and put her arms around him, and he rested his head on her shoulder, a deep sigh of contentment rumbling through him. He wasn't a pet. He wasn't just a guard dog. He was a retired soldier who had found his peace. And she wasn't just a girl who saved a dog. She was a handler who had earned the unwavering loyalty of a hero. They had saved each other in the ways that mattered most. Together, they turned and walked toward the warm lights of the farmhouse, a perfect, unspoken understanding between them. Their story wasn't about a single shocking moment anymore. It was about the quiet, everyday partnership that came after. A bond forged in compassion, proven in courage, and built to last a lifetime.